The Ozarks in the fall. On October 20th, we left Parker for a short one-week trip to the Ozarks in order to do some hiking and enjoy the fall foliage. We took Colorado 86 to Lyman and then US 40 to Cheyenne Wells, US 385 to Sheraton Lake, and Colorado 96 to the Colorado border. Once in Kansas, we continued on Kansas 96, stopping at Dighton City for lunch, and then continued east till we got to Great Bend, where we changed to US 56 east, and then I-135 and Kansas 196 east and south to El Dorado, where we spent the night. We ate our lunch in the Dighton City Park and then enjoyed the facilities that they provided. From El Dorado, we took US 54 to the Kansas-Missouri border. In Missouri, we stayed with US 54 all the way to Osage Beach, our destination for the day. However, along the way, we stopped just a little short of Camdenton at the Ha-Ha-Tonka State Park. In the park, the first thing we went to see was the ruins of a castle built in the early part of the 20th century and after a short existence burnt down. And what they have left there are the ruins. But from the trail that headed up to them, we get a little view of a piece of the lake of the Ozarks. Looking down from the trail, we got this view of a little bit of fall foliage. Here's the lake of the Ozarks, or a little tiny piece of it, which snakes around for miles and miles. And again, back in there is the castle ruins. This is the way the castle looked in 1923 before it burnt down. And this is the way it looks today. We'll see it from the three sides of the castle to which we had access. Moving counterclockwise, this is the second side of the castle. And this is the third side. This is from right below the castle itself, and you can see this view of a piece of Lake of the Ozarks. And on the top of a hill near the castle was the water tower that they built to service the castle. You are not allowed inside the tower, but taken through a gate, this is what the interior of the tower now looks like. It also had been destroyed earlier. And on the water tower hill, we got a view of some fairly nice color. Then, still within Ha-Ha-Tonka State Park, we took a hike to see this natural bridge. The cliff towers above the bridge, as you can see. This picture is taken from the other side of the natural bridge, where you can see the cairns built by previous hikers. Following the trail beyond the natural bridge, we passed by this large wall of rock and saw this pretty display of color. And here, taken at Osage Beach, where our motel is a big span of the Lake of the Ozarks. It's basically a drowned riverbed, I think. from a dam somewhere. And we have the sun here, which is going to make that a little difficult. But you can see how it just winds around like a snake. And this is probably the widest place in the lake, right in here. On day 3, we left Osage Beach and headed south on Missouri 5, taking that all the way to Ada, Missouri, where we switched to Missouri 76, J, and then JJ, taking us to the Arkansas border. Our Arkansas route is shown in the upper left-hand corner of the map. We took US 65 south to Harrison, and then we took Arkansas 43 southwest from Harrison to the Lost Valley Trailhead. After taking a hike at the Lost Valley Trail, we returned on 43 to Harrison for the night. In Missouri, shortly after turning onto Missouri 76, we spotted this tree by the side of the road, and I parked it and got out to take this picture. Eileen, who stayed in the car, took this picture of me walking next to the tree. This was taken a little further south along Missouri 76. This colorful valley could be found to the west side of US 165 in Arkansas, just north of Harrison. When we got to the Lost Valley Trailhead, we broke out our chairs and our lunch and ate a meal before embarking on the trail. Then we embarked on the Lost Valley Trail. Despite the fact that there's still lots of leaves left on the trees, you can see that the ground is covered with dry leaves already. We are not getting a lot of color, unfortunately. The leaves on the trees seem to be still green, and the ones on the ground are brown. But once in a while, you did run into a little bit of bright color. The trail followed along a creek bed, which at this time of the year was totally dry. Here's an interesting development. You see this little tree growing up and wrapping around the trunk of this other one all the way up to the top like a strangler fig. Following the creek, we have come to what is called the Natural Bridge. You can see the towering rock formation coming down, and it bridges over a river which flows down into this pool. And in the summertime and the spring, there is a waterfall here, but at this point the waterfall is very minute. Here is the downstream side of this creek, emerging from the Natural Bridge and running down into the pool that we saw a few moments before. Here we've scrambled around to the upstream side of the formation that makes up this natural bridge, and here is the entrance of where the river flows into that cave that we saw it coming out of in the previous shot. Here again is the downstream side of the natural bridge, and this is the upstream side. Here we get an idea of the ruggedness of the terrain on the uphill side of the natural bridge. As we continued along the trail, we saw these rocks covered with these blue tinted lichens. And here from the level of the creek bed, towering over us is this huge bluff. At the bottom of that cliff that we just saw is Cobb Cave and the creek, which is right here. And Cobb Cave has provided shelter for thousands of years. They found artifacts that were 2,000 years old here. Here is Cobb Cave. And here is Eileen inside of Cobb Cave. It looks like it's a big cave. At this point, the trail got fairly tough and rocky, and we parted company. Eileen stayed back while I went on a short distance to see Eden Cave at the end of the trail. In wetter times, I believe, Eden Falls cascades down this cliff into the creek below. And off to the side here is Eden Falls Cave. You see the entrance right here. You can enter this cave, but I didn't have a flashlight and I was alone and decided the rocks looking quite slippery, I would be a little bit wiser. Then it was a long walk back, enlivened somewhat by the color in the treetops that we could see. We headed back northeast toward Harrison, and off the side of the road there was a viewpoint close to Harrison which we stopped to enjoy, and this is looking down at Arkansas down below. Although it's rather pretty, the colors are somewhat disappointing. There's an awful lot of brown and not very much red in all of that change. We spent the night in Harrison. On the morning of day 4, we left Harrison and took Arkansas 7 south to Dardanelle, making a short detour east on Arkansas 16 to the Pedestal Rocks trailhead. After our hike on the trailhead, we returned to Arkansas 7 and continued to Dardanelle, where we took Arkansas 155 to the top of Mount Nebo, where we did a little bit more hiking. Then we backtracked north a bit to nearby Russellville for the night. Just south of Jasper, we turned off of Arkansas 7 in order to see the so-called Grand Canyon of Arkansas. Turning to look across the street gave a more colorful view. We're on the Pedestal Rocks Trail in Arkansas, and you can see an awful lot of the leaves have already fallen. But there's still some red here and there. And there's my travel companion sneezing. I have some fallen logs which are pretty much covered with mushrooms. We broke out of the woods at a bluff line in this rather colorful tree. There were also some colorful shrubs growing up from just below the bluff line. And here you can see just how sharply the cliff drops. The drawing card of this hike was to see the mushroom-shaped rocks, and we see one here, although it's very difficult to make out the shape of the rock with all of the foliage that's in the way. This picture may give a sense of the sheerness of the bluff line. And you can also see some of the mushroom-shaped rocks. Here's a mushroom rock that actually looks like a mushroom rock. Can't follow it very far down, but the column comes right up here to this flowered top. Returning to Highway 7, we stopped for lunch at the Rotary Ann Overview, and this is the view one gets to the west from there. Arriving at Mount Nebo, we went to the Visitor Center, and taken from the rear of the Visitor Center looking more or less north, this is the view from the top of Mount Nebo. You see a nuclear power plant in the middle between those two trees that are on the left. Well, this is a view from the top of Mount Nebo, and we are on the Rim Trail, and we'll be walking along the Rim Trail in this direction. Here's the trail. We've now reached the sort of sharp west end of the trail, and this is the view looking out to the west, and then we will very quickly be turning and walking along the south side of the mountain. And this is the view from the south side of Mount Nebo. On day 5, we left from Russellville and took Arkansas 7 south, and then Arkansas 298 and 27 over to Arkansas 88, which ran west through the town of Mena and then all the way to the Oklahoma border, where it became Oklahoma 1, which we took west to US 259 and then US 59 north to Sallisaw, where we spent the night. Shortly after passing Mena, we arrived at the Queen Wilhelmina State Park, where we took, first of all, a short walk on the Spring Trail. And you can see that the trees must have been very pretty about a week or so ago, but it seems that we're well past the height of the splendor. On the trail, we saw some lichen-covered rocks. And here is the spring on the Spring Trail. No water in it at the moment. And then water would tumble on down the hill. Then we took the somewhat more rugged Lover's Leap Trail, which led to this platform from which lovers could leap. And as you can see, if they leapt, they would have quite a fall. From here there were some colorful trees and a fairly hazy view out into the distance. And here is a well-known lover of the area preparing to leap. Or not. As we headed up US 259 in Oklahoma, we got our last view of some colorful leaves. After a pleasant night in Sallisaw, we worked our way north on the 6th day of our trip into Kansas, and then following the blue line, we continued to the west and north to Pratt in about the middle of the state, where we spent the night. The morning started with a pretty sunrise in Sallisaw. Later in the day in south central Kansas, we saw cotton being raised and harvested. On the final day of our trip, we left Pratt and continued west to the border with Colorado. Just across the border, in Grenada, we stopped to see the World War II Japanese detention camp at Amache, and then continued back home following basically the route that we had taken on our way to the Ozarks. The Amache relocation camp, which held 10,000 people at one time during the World War II, was completely taken apart after the war was over and left without any of the buildings. They've now rebuilt a few buildings so that you can see what things look like. This first one is a barracks building. The second building is a recreation hall, and the third building is a guard tower.